Confidence is about how you see yourself. Welcome to the Uniquely Confident Podcast.
Positive energy and good vibrations from me to you. Yes, it is. It's another dope episode of the Uniquely Confident Podcast. What it do, good people? What it do? It's your boy RJD, the Imperfect Gentleman. It's been a little second since I recorded an episode, so pardon a little rust, but I missed you all, and I definitely cannot wait to have this phenomenal conversation. But you guys understand that around here, there's certain protocol that we must follow. Doesn't mean just because I've been away for a while doesn't mean that we get away from the protocol. Protocol is always going to be falling in line. So with that being said, we got to talk to the good man upstairs, and we got to pay the bills around here. So let's do that. Father God, we thank you for another day, another opportunity to say thank you. We are grateful for the space. We are grateful for this time in our lives where we are, good, bad, or indifferent. Right now, we understand it all works together for us and not to us. So with that understanding, we are grateful. Right now, God, we ask you for some understanding in a space of grace, so we understand that we need to grow as men and be better as where we are, so we can go forward, not just for ourselves, but for our loved ones. So right now, across the airways, we ask you to help us bless someone in a time of need. And these things we do pray in the Most High's name. Amen. Now that that's taken care of, let's pay a bill or two around here. Check this out. For all your printing needs, Cassie's Classic Designs is out there, and she is doing her thing. She is making orders these days out of the Yahoos. So if you have any hats, any shirts, anything that needs to be printed, cups, designs, anything behind me, anything you need to design, Cassie's Classic Design is the way. Look her up on Instagram at Cassie's Classic Design on Instagram. And if you want to go get her directly, it's Cassie's Classic Design at gmail.com. So without further ado, now check this out. I had the opportunity to be on this gentleman's podcast a few weeks ago, and we had a great conversation. So of course, he had to come over here and bless this stage and have another conversation with me over here. And I'm super excited because he's become a good friend and a brother to me. And we lock arms in the space of men and fathers. So without further ado, I'd like to bring to the stage my man, Mr. Jody Sedrick. Give me a second. Let me bring him to the stage. Well, I'm having a spaz moment. Here we go.
Hey, good evening.
Yo, Jody, what's going on, my brother? How you doing, man?
Yo, man, it's such an honor to be on your platform, man. I'm super excited to visit with you. So,
Oh man, listen, anytime we have a conversation, it's always something of great value, and I'm super excited about it because where I'm from and growing up, I haven't always had such high value conversations. So now that I have meet people that I can have these conversations with, and not just have them, but live greater because of them, I really get excited. So to everyone out there who don't know you, let them know who you are and what you do, man.
yeah, so my name's Jody Sedrick. I host the podcast Father's Fire, all with the intent and drive to ignite the fire within us men to be better husbands, better fathers. I also work with Sean Hart with the Involved Dad program out of Detroit, Michigan, coaching dads or coaching men who are trying to be better dads. And that can range because a lot of them are coming out of really bad situations, trying to reconnect with their kids and their baby mamas sometimes. So do a little bit of that, and also in part, I'm a coach, speaking coach, and business coach with the Elite Speaking Academy, and I own my own business called Zimware. So in the software space. So yeah, I'm a busy guy.
Yes, indeed, man. Well, like I said before, thank you for joining us, man. I'm excited about this conversation because one thing we're going to discuss today is about the confidence of a father and the importance of it, right? See, now we discussed fatherhood on your platform, and anyone out there that really wants to hear that discussion about fatherhood, I had really advise you to go check that out. It was a phenomenal conversation. We went back and forth, and I felt enriched after the conversation myself. So I know you'll be blessed. Go check that out. Now I want to have this discussion about your confidence and how your confidence affects your family. Because one thing I do understand about confidence is that it affects us individually, but as leaders of our family, it has a different kind of effect on them. So I just want to speak to your level of confidence and how it affects your family, bro.
I think confidence is a pivotal foundation to any family, right? Especially if you're the dad. And, I was very blessed. I had a great dad. I'm the oldest of 8 kids. And I remember when Judy and I were having our first son, I mean, we waited almost 4 years before we had our first kid after being married. And she's the youngest of two. And she's like, Jody, I don't know what to do. I'm like, it's okay. I got you. I've changed lots of diapers. I've fed lots of babies and we will figure it out. And so from the very beginning, I always wanted to be a dad, and
Mm,
that's a good role model to emulate.
right.
Um, and so that gave me the confidence that when Judy and I were finally expecting our firstborn, that I'm like, all right, we got this. No worries.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, bro. Like you said you always wanted to be a dad. What made you always want to be a dad?
I think it just had to be from the way I saw my dad.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
and I recognize that as a rare blessing. In fact, I remember when I was working at a company doing graphic design years ago,
Hmm.
my family came into town and we went water skiing, spent the day together, and I invited a coworker to join me, and he spent the entire day with us. And then on Monday, I walked in. He goes, Jody, he goes, you're not normal. I go, what do you mean? He goes, man, I'm watching you interact with your dad. I'm watching your siblings interact with each other. I'm watching you interact with your wife and your kids. And he goes, that's not normal. He
Mm,
goes, dude, most families, my family, dude, I can barely talk to my dad. Me and my brother, have a lot of friction. I had a brother that committed suicide.
wow.
And it made me, with the way that he hit me, I was like, wow, that really is a blessing.
Hmm.
And so it gives me an added level of responsibility to be a voice for being a good father and trying to emulate that which I saw in my dad.
Hmm.
Um,
That's
and so I
awesome.
was really blessed from the beginning and had a level of confidence that I think a lot of men, especially when they're coming in, they're like, man, I didn't have a dad, or
Right.
my dad was, drunk. I look at my extended family,
Hmm.
and my cousin, she had a horrible relationship with my uncle, and all of the kids did because he was an abusive alcoholic.
Right.
So I've seen it, but I was blessed to not have that experience in my family.
And one thing that really touched home was when you said, like, your father made you want to be him. Like, what you seen of your dad, it made you want to be him. Like, so you knew that he gave love, you know, he gave compassion, like these kind of things that fatherhood consists of, you seen and embodied through your dad. So to me, that was important because, like, everybody who knows my story, like, my real father wasn't present and my stepdad wasn't present either. So it's like they were, my stepdad was just paying bills. And to his credit, right? Like, I'm in a space now, I can admit that I was a little harder on him than I should have been, and I actually
Mhm.
just made amends with him recently, and let him know that I was sorry for the things that I said to him and about him. Um, but one thing I learned is that you can only teach from where you understand, right? Like, he didn't understand that much. So when I hear you say that your dad actually showed you and made you want to be him and be a father, to me that's powerful.
Yeah, I really gained not only from that experience with my friend, but when Judy and I adopted 2 kids, it really gave me a different perspective on fatherhood, right?
Mhm.
Because I was bringing children into our home. We adopted 2 from Haiti. They came into our home at 8 and 9. And so they had a history of challenges. I mean, really heavy challenges, being in the orphanage for almost 2 years,
Mm,
having, the situation with their dad and their mom being pretty ugly,
right.
and bringing those children into our home. It brought a, it brought a spirit of broken into our
Mm,
home. that rippled across everybody, not just those kids, but also our other kids,
Correct.
because now we were trying to bring a family together with kids that were hoping that they would have a great family, but they also had their guards up,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
they had been disappointed, they had been heartbroken. They, the people that they should have been able to trust let them down. And now, how do you open your heart in a way that allows you to love, but also guards it at the same time? And so it created a very interesting dynamic. And what was interesting about the experience is that it brought the best out of me as a dad, but it also
Mm.
brought out the worst in me.
Wow.
I mean,
Jody,
and
I'm gonna ask you. I gotta ask you, bro. And
no,
it's so much to even unpacking that, because I want to ask you too. Like, how'd you have the confidence, bro? Because even right now, me asking the question, I have goosebumps. Like, because to think that to let someone in your home is sacred, like to let someone in your home is sacred, and then to let into the sanctum of your family. That's deep, bro. Like, how'd you have the confidence to do that?
yeah, it's interesting because my wife, she started going down on these trips to Haiti with a really good friend who was adopting.
Oh
And
wow.
Judy and I, at the very beginnings of our marriage, kind of talked about potentially fostering kids or adopting. And so it was kind of always in the back of our head. But she'd been down there a couple times, took our oldest son down there on one trip. And this one trip, she had a dream the night before she left. And she woke up, she goes, Jody, I've had this dream about going to Haiti. And she, shared the dream with me. And I said, look, if the dream plays out like you said, we'll move forward. We'll take it as a sign from God that we're bringing two kids into our home. And on that Thursday, she called me just in tears. That was a Sunday. The following Thursday, she called me and she said, I found her. I go, what do you
Mm,
mean? She goes, the little girl in my dream, it played out exactly like the dream played out.
wow.
And she goes, but I feel like there's a brother, but I'm not sure. And because there's not a brother in the orphanage. And I said, well, let's not worry about that. Let's just trust God. And when you get home, we'll begin the paperwork for the adoption. And I think it was 3 weeks later, the orphanage called and said, your little girl has a brother. Do you want him too? And so
Wow.
we said, yeah. So yeah, we just felt like God was bringing these two children into our home. And we've always told them, it's like, look, while you may not be our biological children, God brought you to our family.
Right.
And so we're going to do everything to wrap our arms around you. And I tell you, adoption hasn't been easy, but it's been beautiful.
Right.
I remember, and I've shared this story before, but for those, on your platform, and I remember, as we were going through the adoption process, we had to go through parenting classes. And I'm like,
Mm,
dude, I'm already a parent. I already have 4 kids. Why do I need to do this? Right.
right.
And so I kind of went in with kind of this cocky, why do I
It's
need this
man
attitude?
shit.
Right.
That man should be walking around with, right?
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, why? You're wasting my time. Right.
I'm the
But I'll
man of it,
never
dog.
forget. I'll never forget. They had this one video. They had us watch 2 videos one night, and they
Mhm.
were like the most depressing, hard, heart wrenching stories that I'd ever heard. And they were all about children who had been adopted. And even one of these kids committed suicide. And as we're driving home, I turned to my wife, Judy, and I said, "Man, what? Did they not want us to adopt?"
Wow.
And I said, and this statement became prophetic. I said, in love, all things are possible.
Right.
But what I didn't realize, and what I came to realize through the process, that love isn't easy.
Oh no.
that love pushes you, it stretches you, it makes you go into deep places, it makes you look at yourself in a way that you've never looked at yourself and go, man, I thought I was a better dad than that.
Hmm.
And this situation brought out the ugly in me, and I don't want to be that man. So while love can be extremely beautiful, for it to really blossom and really become something that you want to hold on to, you have to go through the fire.
Oh yes. And let me say about that fire and love. Like, we don't understand, like, being that love is the most powerful energy in the world. It has to have some kind of magnitude of hardship when it comes to it, because anything of which with that strength has to come with the force. And we all understand that love penetrates through anything. So with that kind of power and that kind of force, it's not going to be easy a lot of time to contain it between two individuals or more inside of a family dynamic. And this is why a lot of us men struggle when it comes down to, like you said, seeing the ugly of who we are. Like that right there takes confidence. That right there is a confidence booster, if ever there be one. Because once you're able to look at your ugly, and first of all, the first step is being able to look at your ugly, right? Because we could just be like, oh, I don't want to see that. I don't want to deal with that. But if you can just actually take a second to realize and look at your ugly, realize this is not who you're going to be if you make a change. It could be the most beautiful reckoning moment of your entire life as a man, as a father, as a husband, anything, any phase of life. So you saying that love showed you you're ugly, to me, it was like a reminder of, like, love is not as nice as we think it is all the time, right?
It's not all roses, right? When it's
Nope.
true love,
Right.
when it's true lasting love, it has to be cemented by valleys of darkness,
Yes.
because those valleys of darkness force us to lean into each other. If they force us to look at each other, look at ourselves, but they also, those valleys make us strong enough for
Yes.
the climb ahead of us so that we can get to that plateau and go, man, look how far we've come. Look what we've become as a family through the refining process.
Yes. Ooh, that refining process. But, like, I must say though, I'm gonna be honest. Sometimes it sucks. Ouch. Like, think about the word refine, right? Like, when you think what they do to jewelry, like when they think the gold is like, they burn it, they beat it up. Like, yo, let me tell you, the journey of love is one rough one, but it builds so much character. Like, when you think about it, what love actually causes you not to do a lot of times, right? Builds the strength in our character, which then translates into confidence. Because when you love someone, you don't want to hurt them, right? So in order to show that true love, you got to know how to give it and not hurt. Because once again, it's a force of energy. And let me tell you, you being able to open up your home and open up your family, and first of all, not even do that, but being obedient to the will of God, like that right there takes confidence. Can we talk about that for a second? How are you so confident in doing that, bro? How are you so confident in listening to God's voice? Like, how are you so confident in that?
You know, that's a really good question. And I'm actually writing my second book, and it's centered around how difficult faith is.
Mm,
Because see, I think a lot of times we oversimplify faith, just
mm,
like we oversimplify the decision to follow an impression, to follow the way God's pulling us, to follow the assignment. And the example that I've started writing in my book, so I'm giving you a sneak peek,
all right,
is I
guys.
think a lot of
Sneak
times
peek.
I think a lot of times we simplify the story of Abraham and Isaac.
Mm,
Right?
okay.
God came to Abraham and said, "Hey, I want you to go sacrifice your firstborn son." And Abraham, being full of faith, packed up his little donkey, a couple guys with them, and his son, and they headed off to the mountain. And
No.
he got up, climbed to the mountain, and it was done. right? He laid him on the altar and, oh, I see your great faith and your great sacrifice. I don't think so. I don't think that's the way it was.
Definitely not.
I think Abraham got this impression and he's like, wait a sec.
Are you crazy?
Are you crazy? One, are you crazy?
Yeah, literally.
And two, this is the promised son.
Right.
This is my promised son. Man, not only is he the promised son, but I love him.
Right.
And after wrestling with that, he finally said, okay, God's going to do something to raise him up or fulfill that promise. So after working through that, he packed up his donkey, got his son, said, you know what? We need to go make sacrifices to the Lord. And I imagine every single step as you got closer to the mount got harder and harder. And the entire time he's praying, God, is this really what you want me to do? And he'd look at his son, right? And he'd look at his men. He's like, man, what am I going to tell them? And so they get to the bottom of the mountain and he leaves the men behind. And then he starts climbing the mountain with Isaac. And with every step, his heart gets heavier. And then the son goes, Dad, I see the wood. Where's the lamb? And then Abraham has to choke down the tears and say, the Lord's going to provide. And with every step, as he gets up to the mountain and then they start building the altar, then the realization has to set into Isaac as he's laying him on the altar. I mean, Abraham's an old man, so there has to be something in Isaac that there's a level of obedience and faith and confidence in his dad to go, okay. And then he raises the knife. And at the very moment that he's about to sacrifice his son, that's when the angel comes. Now let's talk about faith. Was that easy? Did Abraham was he wrestling in his heart, wrestling in his mind, wrestling with his own faith, his own confidence in the Lord? I'm sure he was, right? But I think a lot of times we oversimplify the story. And while Judy and I had confidence that we were on the right path, dude, there have been many times where we're going, especially as we looked at the challenges, the mental and emotional challenges after we brought our children home that our kids were going through, going, oh my gosh, what do we do? Are we enough for these kids? Right? And we just had to cling on to the knowledge that God brought these children into our home and that we were going to lean in with our love. We were going to lean in with our heart. We were going to lean in with all of our energies to let them know that they were loved and that they had a family. So it's every single day, working towards maintaining that confidence, maintaining that knowledge that you're on the right path, that God's called you to do here, to go this way. And I think as you consistently act on those impressions, you build confidence because you see the Lord's hand along the way.
Yo, Jody, man, like when you broke that down just now at Abraham and Isaac, man, it hit me way differently than I've ever. And I'm a pew baby, right? Like I was born in the church. Like I've heard the story 1,000,001 times, but I haven't heard it as a dad, and I haven't stopped to think until just now. Like first and foremost, I would like to put myself in the mindset that I have now back in those times. So off the rip, God would say, hey, RJ, I need you to sacrifice Joe. No, you're bugging. I'm not doing it. Off the rip. It's not even all right, well, good luck trying to get me to do that because I'm not doing it. Right? Like, I'm just thinking about the physical feelings and emotions that just come about just by thinking that he have to had wrestled with God so long as a man. Like my baby boy, like my first son, like this is my namesake. Most time is like you want me to just to give him up because my faith? No, I don't know. But then after the wrestling, right, and and the tussling and all the thoughts, because he had to think about every other time that God has provided, right? Because that's a lot of times where we forget about, and this is why I always every man that I coach, I tell him it's about your receipts. Whenever you go through something, you get a receipt for it. Every single time, every circumstance, every situation, every obstacle, it comes with a receipt. And you're not supposed to just toss them to the wind. You're supposed to take those and put them in a safe space, because it's gonna come a time where you got to go back into that safe and check those receipts and see where God has brought you from. And I'm just by thinking to myself, man, Abraham had to go back into those receipts. Like, man, well, you know what, God, you ain't never lied to me before, right? You haven't you haven't disappointed me before, so okay. Like that had to be one of the hardest points to even say okay. Not even getting to the starting to walk, but the initial okay. Because at that point you had to say to yourself, like the ego and that pride is like, what? I'm about to give up my son? Like the man had to stand up at some point, and he still had to say okay. And like you said, Jay, through each and one of those steps, I just imagine throwing up. Like every single step, bro. I just imagine getting really nauseous, like, oh my God. And laying him on the knife in hand and
And you
knowing
can't,
now.
yeah, and you can't tell me that knife in hand, that tears weren't just streaming down his face, praying
Oh,
and pleading with God to
still.
either say no or to do a miracle, right?
Right.
And so I think, back to your thing, how did you have the confidence? I think confidence is developed, it's built
Mhm.
through, being put in tough situations and
Right.
putting God to the test, putting ourselves to the test. Because what did Abraham need out of that experience? Abraham needed to learn something about Abraham.
Mm.
Just like we need to learn something about
Yes.
ourselves. I need to know, how far will Jody go for his kids? How far will Jody go for his wife? How far will Jody go for his relationship with God?
Mm.
And we have to be tested, we have to be proven
Mm-hmm. Yes.
so that we can learn something about ourselves. And
Absolutely.
as we learn that about ourselves, we develop the confidence and faith to move forward with greater fortitude.
Mm. Yes. And this is why I say all the time, your confidence is a muscle and your character building is the workout. See, we want to know how to get our biceps bigger as men, and our chest and all our shoulders and all this. We know what to do in the gym. But when we start talking about developing confidence, we trying to figure out how do we do that. But the muscle of confidence is developed through the character building situations that you don't run from, but you meet head on. And think about this. It's just like walking. You had to fall a few times to figure this thing out. But the falls is what showed you, oh, you know what? I'm supposed to put my right foot forward and my left. Because if you didn't fall, there wouldn't be no pain, so you would have never learned to walk. So each and every experience, yes, it might come with pain, but it also comes with a great level of confidence if you pick out the lesson from it. And yo, Jody, you did a phenomenal job, bro, about painting that picture at this stage of the game for me as a new father about Abraham and Isaac. I'm about ready to go read the good book right now and just dive into that, man, because I'm just like, I can like now am as a man. Like, like I told you, as a boy, we hear these stories and they don't really hit home because we're children and it's understandable. But as a man now in this stage where I literally am leading my family, I have a little boy that's 4, a little girl that's 5, and to have to think about even a sacrifice and they would be it's almost unthinkable. And just to know that that man Abraham had that much faith in God, it makes me know there's some work I need to do. Number one, there's some work I got to do.
Well, and I wonder if, the lesson for us is, what are we willing to sacrifice for our kids?
Mm,
What are we willing to sacrifice for our wife?
mm-hmm.
No, and are we really putting them first? Are we putting them preeminent in our life? I mean, and what I found is, the more I put them first, the more I grow as a husband,
Mm-hmm.
the more I grow as a father. And dude, I mean, the greatest thing about being a kid, having kids, is being a kid. I mean, especially at Christmas
Yeah,
time. I mean,
yeah.
dude, I can't
Yes.
tell you how many times, we be playing Santa, and dude, I'd be playing with the toys, till 1, 2 a.m. Judy's like, come on, it's time for bed. I'm like, I'm having fun. What are you talking about?
Yeah. What bet for what? Like they'll get the toys in the morning, but I'm playing right now. Yes,
That's
I
right.
definitely know the vibes, man. Like, honestly, let me even say something about that. Being able to experience that wholeheartedly, that's a gift too. Because I know a lot of men who have families, loving families, bro. Like just like me and yours, like where they're longing for our attention, they're longing for their presence, and because they're so bogged down with a lot of things, past emotional hurt, being bogged down with work every single day, not being able to think, not being able to having a moment for themselves, they're just not able to put themselves emotionally in the space to be able to reciprocate or even give what their family needs from them emotionally. And the fact that you embrace as being a dad and a father in the present moment as much as you do, I want to speak towards that as well, bro. Like, with how do you find yourself staying so present with amongst your family,
I
especially
think
with all
it's
the things
just
you got going on, because you have a lot going on. So how do you do it?
Well, I think the things that, when our kids were young, Judy and I did two things. Friday night was date night. That has been a sacred night for us. We have consistently dated every Friday night for the last 33, almost 33 years. Right.
Nice.
So we've put each other first. Right.
Right.
Um, and sometimes that went to Saturday, but every week we always do a date night. But we also had a family night. So Monday night was family night. And so at 6 o'clock after dinner, I turned off the phone, and we as a family, when the kids were little, we would have, a little gospel lesson. We'd sing songs, we'd play games, we'd make cookies, we'd let the kids choose something and they would take the lead. And so we have this pattern of consistently making time for family and making time for each other.
Mm,
And I think that is really critical, is that you as a dad, and I think a lot of times we as dads, we look at ourselves and look at what we're lacking,
mm-hmm.
or what we're perceived as lacking,
Yes.
when what we really have to offer is exactly what your kids need.
Exactly.
And my wife and I have a tradition that every Christmas Eve we give each other Christmas ornaments. So we have, you figure, 64 ornaments that represent, every year.
Yes.
And there was one of my absolute favorite ornaments is a year when it was the leanest for our family. And
Mm,
my wife made my ornament.
wow.
It's got nice little ribbon around it. It's got a photo of me, Judy, and Devin, and Christian. And it is the simplest ornament, but it's something that she made and gave to me.
Mm,
And that was the leanest Christmas that we've ever had. And I made her ornament as well. I went into the wood shop and I carved her out an ornament. And it's those seasons that you have to recognize, even though maybe you don't have the job you want, or maybe you lost your job, or you're not making the kind of money that you want. You just have to make time, and you have to embrace, hey, this is where I'm at, and we're going to have as much fun as we can.
mm-hmm.
I mean, Judy and I, in that year, I mean, that was a lean year. Our date night, some nights were us making chocolate chip cookies and a milkshake and going into our master bedroom and just having time together watching Netflix or TV or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? We got creative. And I think a lot of times we look at what we lack and we don't get creative.
Mm-hmm.
And in that process of being creative, we make memories that last forever.
And that's what really matters. Those memories are and that's what I think that the one thing that really simplified my life over the last few years, because I was very materialistic for so long growing up, because obviously when you're young, it's what you do. You look for material things. But as I got older and I heard a gentleman explain to me, we go through life for based upon feelings, right? Like you don't want a car, you don't want a house based upon the house or the car, because 9 times out of 10 we don't know what the horsepower is, we don't know what the torque of the engine is, we don't really know what the car actually entails of other than us just driving it, but we want the feeling that comes from it. And once you think about life as a whole, as a complete whole, you think to yourself, well, wait, I'm only living this life for feelings and memories. If you think about that, like when time passes, you have the memory of what? The memory of that feeling that you had in that present moment. So if we can always just get back to simplicity of life and just creating those moments, like you said, like the most powerful moments where you didn't have as much as you thought you did. And that's where I think that a lot of us would find so much of the peace that we're searching for if we looked in that space. But my question to you, Jody, is in this 2022 world, to a young man who's dating right now, what do we say to them right now? Because me and you right now, we've been blessed. We have been blessed because we have women in our lives who understand what life is and where they are in their journey as women. But there's a lot of young men out here right now, Jody, and I hear some horror stories. And I'm not attacking other women right now, but I'm telling you that I'm hearing the horror stories from these men. What are we telling that young men to look for in a woman now? I know this conversation just jumped, but it, today I had 2 sessions today where it really got intense about this very subject. So I wanted to bring it to you because I think that us men, especially fathers that who've been married for a while to the woman that we love, we don't do a good job of explaining to the young men how we knew she was the one.
Oh man, that's a good question. In fact, I talked a little bit about that on my podcast today. When I met my wife, I was she was the first girl. I mean, I remember I was walking down the mall. I was heading to see my best friend, and we were going to hang out. And I'm walking up this ramp, and I see her in the shoe store, and I'm just like, man, my heart just skipped a beat. I mean, it flat out skipped a beat, and I'm like, that's the one. I mean, I just knew in my heart, right? And at that time, I was dating a lot of ladies. I mean, I
Yeah.
was having a good time. I was, and it just was what Steve and I did. We're like, let's go to the beach. What up? And Judy was the first girl that made me nervous because I used to bet people that I couldn't get people's phone numbers or take
Yeah.
them to lunch or dinner. I mean, I was like, I'm all in, right? And I was and I still am a short little dude. So I kind of had this little man complex and I had to always prove myself. But she was the first girl that made me nervous. And it took me a
Mm.
couple days to go in. And I went in under the auspices to talk to a girl that I knew that worked there so that I could meet her. And that kind of backfired because that girl kind of had a thing for me and was like, yeah, she told Judy we were an item. And it's like, so then I had to work through all that, right? And but I think at the core, you gotta find a gal that one just hits that heart, right? Just hits that
Mm.
spot.
Right.
But number two, she's got to be willing to walk with you in every aspect of life,
Yes, Jody.
every
Yes.
season, every phase, every right. And you together have to be willing to grow together and lean in and forgive and laugh and explore.
Mm.
And that really is critical. And I think a lot of times what I see today is a lot of couples miss an opportunity of growth together because they're waiting till they get their job, they get all their finances in order, they have the money for the perfect wedding.
Mhm.
When what you really need is you need the experience of going through that together, because you're going to have highlights and you're going to have really low lights,
Oh
and
yes.
it's going to draw you together. It's going to seal your hearts together in a way that waiting will never accomplish.
Absolutely. And I
So
think
be
that,
willing to do that together.
yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because I think that's the issue. We waiting for this magic person to come around to suit who we think we're going to be. Because even when I hear, because what, and this is what I hear on both sides. I hear that, oh, he's not ready, or she wants too much. And what I'm what I want to say to both parties, and like I have to say all the time, is that you think you want somebody that's going to suit who you're trying to be. The person who you need right now is the person who understands you right now, is going to walk with you to get to the person that you're looking to be. There's no one going to get this be ready for the future you. Because think about this. If the future, if someone came ready for the future you would not want them
No, you wouldn't be ready for them. You would not be ready for them.
at all.
It's just like Corey Tenenbaum. I'm not sure if you know her, but she wrote a book. She's a Holocaust survivor.
Okay.
And when she was young, she had this experience. And her dad, she was really frustrated. She came to her dad, she's unloading the experience. And for some reason, I can't remember the experience right now. And he said, "Daughter, you need to understand that this experience is God's perfect preparation for only a future that He can see."
Mm, wow.
So a lot of times we're missing the preparation, the groundwork, the pulling together of a future that God intends for us. But a lot of
Mm,
times we're not willing to embrace what's happening today.
right.
Not only as an individual, but also as a couple, and go, all right, you know what? You have enough of the qualities that I want in a husband or a wife. And I have enough that complements you. And we're going to walk together, and we're truly going to become one. And we're going to become better in the process as individuals and as a couple, because we will have gone through that refining process together.
Together. Oh man. And let me tell you, I'm so grateful for you just being so honest, because of that. I think that that's what we need, especially in this relationship spaces, about two people coming together. Like, there is no one going to be ready for you. Like like Dr. Miles Monroe said this before, and it's so funny to me, but it's so real. When we asked for a table, God didn't give us a table. He pointed to that tree and said, "Hey, you figure it out." We needed shoes. He said, "Hey, there goes a cow. You figure that out." So he's never ever gonna give you something readily made for you. And I had to learn that even with my own self, in my wife's situation growing up. We had to grow together. And I like, one day she asked me, and this is one of the questions I used to hate for her to ask me: "What do you want me to do?" And I would always tell her, "I can't tell you how to be the woman. Like, I can't, I can't tell you that." But in that space, also couldn't tell her how to be a man, because I didn't know myself. But in that space, we learned that we didn't shy away from each other. We came closer together. Listen, I don't know this. You might not know it, but let's learn it together. And
Yeah.
that's where the true bond has come from. And I really want everyone on the sound of our voice to understand that we are, in order to get to where someone and be with somebody and love them, you got to go through something with them. It's not going to always be, oh, let's go through the mall and let's go pick up some clothes. No, it's going to be some hell to pay.
Dude, I love that, and I'm reminded of the last 2 years, almost 3 years now, that me and my family went through as a family. My son was faced with some very heavy, um, accusations, and brought us to the judicial system. And I tell you, that was an ugly, challenging 3 years.
Mm,
But I tell you, while I would not wish that experience on anybody and I would not want to walk it again, I would not trade what
mm.
we've become through the process.
Wow. That's powerful, Jody. That's powerful.
I would not trade what we have become through the
Wow.
process, because God has sealed our hearts together. He has cemented us as a family like no other experiences could have had.
Mm,
It forced us, it forced my kids, it forced everyone to not only lean into each other, but lean into God and trust that He was taking our family where we needed to go.
mm. Wow, Jody. Like that right there is so powerful because and anytime somebody says that they don't want to go through experience, we be like, oh, that's pretty rough. But anytime someone says, I wouldn't want my worst enemy to go through it, we step back and say, wait a minute, that had to be really rough. And then for you to say in the same breath, Jody, that you don't want to go through it again, but you wouldn't give it the experience back because of what it's done for your family. That right there, bro, it did something to my spirit even when you said it because that's a powerful statement because and you've seen and you have the awareness because that's what's key about this whole statement. It's the awareness you have, Jody. And this is what I want to point to. Like, if we have start having more awareness about the entire picture of our families, of ourselves, you knew it wasn't just that moment, right? Because we, for some reason, even myself, when I'm going through something, I get locked into that moment. I have a hard time stepping out of that situation and seeing it for what it's worth. But even when you was going through that situation, you knew that, yo, listen, there's something that's going to come out of this. That's not only going to make us better individually, but as a family. And that right there to me is commendable. And it's actually something that I need to work on, especially when I'm going through a test trial as a leader of this family. Because I have a tendency to close up, to go and want to deal with it on my own. And I think that that's where a lot of us get in trouble out of trying to deal with it on our own and just be the men, right? And just man up instead of saying, you know what, I need help. Help me go through this.
Well, and if you think about it, God didn't call you. I mean, yes, He called you to be a leader of your family, but what did He say? Leave your wife and go and become one
Yes,
with your wife. So, how can you become one if you're the only one going off in the corner and trying to solve the problem?
right.
You're trying to shoulder everything when your wife yearns to be part of the solution. She
Absolutely.
yearns to be walking with you side by side. So why don't we open our heart and shed the shell of pride and go, sweetheart, I need you.
Yes.
I need you to walk with me because you have a perspective as a woman, as a wife, as a mother that is different but similar to mine as a husband, a father, and as a man. And so together, those two perspectives make a whole that is enabled if you allow God to be a part of that couple, to turn that couple into a threesome with power so that you can become what God intended us to be as a family.
Man. And that right there gives me so much happiness, Jody, because when I look about where I've come from up until this very point, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud to say that the man that I used to be is not the man that I am right now. And it excites me to know that the man that I am right now is not going to be the man I'm going to be at 2 years from this point. You know what I'm saying? So this has been an enriching, as usual, an enlightening and empowering conversation. And I knew it would come to this. I just didn't know we was gonna jump all around, but my brain, everybody knows my brain goes everywhere, especially when I'm in the mood to have such a conversation. But I'm just grateful, man, and I'm so impacted by this conversation, especially how you broke down the Abraham and Isaac tonight, man. So before we get up out of here, Jody, I want to ask you one more question.
Yeah.
I like to leave this podcast with a sort of a forecast of what's going to happen going forth in your life. So going forward, what can we expect Jody to be more confident about in life? What are you going to work on?
Wow, that's a good question. Especially because I feel God's pull, and I know that Judy and are being pulled in a direction. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet.
Mm,
So I'm trying to be obedient in the little things right now, right? And following those inspirations. So, the first thing did was I joined, I hired a personal coach to really help me with my ability to speak. And I've become a speaking coach. And then that's led to me writing my first book. And now I'm writing my second book. And so I feel like I'm building all of these foundational pieces for a future that God truly sees. And He's given
mm,
me a little bit of glimpses here and there. And I was talking to my son about this yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I feel like while I'm anxious to move forward, I don't have all of the pieces in place to catapult me to where God needs me to be.
mm.
So I have confidence that I'm being led. I have confidence that I'm going to act on those inspirations. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm keeping a journal. I'm recording little voice memos to
Mm.
myself as I
Yes,
have inspiration, right?
yes,
And I'm trying to act on those inspirations. I'm digging into the topic of my book, not only so that I can address it in a way that will be helpful to others, but also so that I grow myself. Right?
right.
It's as much something for me as it is for everybody else because I'm
Yes.
still struggling with it. So, when I look ahead, 2022 definitely is going to be another book. It's going to be continuing to coach and mentor other people who are looking to build businesses and or speak. Because I've owned my own business for 12 years, so I have a lot of experience. So I plan on doing some of that, but I really I want to have a stronger impact for fathers.
Mm.
I mean, at the core, I want to be a voice just like you of igniting that fire within us as men to be better men, right? To
Yes.
be gentle and kind and long suffering. I mean, not to redefine masculinity, but to expand
Right.
masculinity,
Right.
right? Because we need to be strong. We need to be, the
Right.
shoulders and the backs that people can turn
Absolutely.
to. But we also need to be gentle and kind and
Very much.
loving and have our arms open and pull people in and lift people up and move them forward. So that's real, at the center. I really, really want to help men become that and ignite that fire within them and their families. And at some point, Judy and I are going to sell her house and buy a 45-foot catamaran, and I want to sell the world with her. But she's like, wait, I can't leave the grandbabies. I'm like, they can come. We don't have any grandbabies yet, so I don't know what she's talking about.
Hey, she might know something you don't know. She might, as usual, they see further off than we do sometimes, man.
Yeah, so
Man, that's awesome. Well, I do that now, especially on this platform. So not only can it be a record, but it could also something you can look back to and hold yourself accountable.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
it's about us building our own confidence by doing things that's going to stretch us a little bit. So I put that question at the end of the podcast purposely to put a little pressure now because now it's been said, right? So yes, the thing that you're gonna have to do is now is lean a little God, keep paying attention to what God is talking about, follow that pull, and that's so important. Do the small things and do those small
Yeah,
inspirations because that's where those are the building blocks for our future. Jody,
yeah.
man, this episode is golden. I am going to stamp this with the stamp of approval. Bam. You have come
Boom.
through, bro, and really blazed this platform. So I want you to do me a favor, and everybody else who's going to check this out, let them know where they can find you, my brother.
Well, first of all, I got to thank you for letting me be part of the Uniquely Confident podcast. I love what you do. And just like when you and I were visiting on my podcast, I mean, you and I just can keep going. I mean, it always gets deeper
Absolutely.
and deeper and deeper, and it's like leads into another topic. So, but yeah, so you can check me out on Instagram, Jody Sedrick. That's JodySedrick. And my podcast is Father's Fire. That's fire with a Y. So FYRE. And that's on all of your main platforms. And I'm on Facebook and YouTube as well. So.
Absolutely. I'm going to put that down in the description as well. So listen, like I said, he has a phenomenal podcast, guys. Go over there and check that out. The episode with me was outstanding, and I know the rest of the other episodes are as well. So do not do yourself an injustice by not checking it out. So go check that podcast out. Phenomenal conversations, all about uplifting fathers and being better. And not just for ourselves, because we're not selfish. We're not doing this just because we want to have the pat on the back of being a better father. No, we want the fruits from it. It's for our children and generations to come. So I'm super excited for what God has coming in your life, bro. I've been nothing but inspired since even meeting you since Clubhouse. I'm super excited to even be a part of your mission and your journey going forward, bro. So by all means, if you need me, we have contacts, reach out, let me know, and I'm there. No matter what it is, I am always going to be a part of the mission because I know your heart and your passion about making men and fathers better. And that's exactly what my mission and my heart is as well. So, bro, once again, thank you so much for coming through.
Thank
And I
you.
appreciate you, man.
No, man, I appreciate you. And it's amazing how I don't believe that God is accidental in bringing men together. I just don't, right? And it's amazing how you and our friendship has just blossomed in the short 6 months that we've met each other. And I just love the depth that you bring to the discussion. I love the way that you really look inward. And I mean, that's really the goal, right? If we can look inward and be honest with ourselves and listen to the little whisperings of the spirit that are going, you need to give that up. We can become the man that God intends us to be.
Yes, indeed. Yo, Jody, like if it was that easy to flick that guy off, we'd be so much better. But we flick him off and he slaps us right back.
Right back. I thought I got rid of you. I
thought we keep coming back.
Yeah.
Hey, man, this is, like I said, this has been a dope conversation. And once we get started, it's almost impossible to stop. Well, but what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna be obedient and get up out of here because we understand that time is the only commodity that we cannot control. So we have to use it wisely and be smart. So guess what, guys? Until the next time I see you, remember, confidence is all about how you see yourself. So guess what, guys? Be good to yourself and the ones around you. And if you can't be good to the ones around you, that's okay. Don't bug out. That's okay. Just get those folk from around you. This is RJD, the Imperfect Gentleman. And this has been another dope episode of the Uniquely Confident Podcast. Y'all be blessed because we will. Peace, y'all.
Peace out.